Welcome to Gaming Retail Ramblings. I'm your host, Travis Severance. This is episode number 38, allegedly. We're going to have to double check on that because it's been so long since I've been live. It's a really hot day today in Rochester. It was 92 when I was coming in from lunch, so we are sweltering here. A couple of different topics for today. I'm going to sort of talk about three different things. I'm going to have a discussion about tariffs. I'm going to talk about trade shows that I went to the last couple of weeks, and then a brief conversation about my visit to Riot Games that I had last week, and a conversation about Riftbound as well. Thanks to everybody that's live in chat. I'm excited with those numbers, and we'll do a 30-minute AMA at the end, just like we always do, to have conversations about whatever you choose to talk about. But I'm going to get right into it, and we're going to talk about tariffs. I've had a ton of people reach out and ask me about tariffs, what I thought. I've had discussions with publishers, distributors, customers, other retailers. It's a pretty wide topic. The reality of it is that there's been a couple of times when I've thought about doing an entire episode on it, but every time I go to write the episode, things change. So I didn't want to put out a bunch of product and have my producers and editor go through that and deal with that stuff. And then the next day, the next hour, it's just a completely different situation. The reality of it is it's hard to fill 30 minutes of space with something that's sort of so up in the air because we never know what prices are going to be and how that's going to react. So I'll just tell you what I did as far as my response to the announcement initially when the tariffs happened and what I've done since then. And the first thing that I did was, as soon as the tariffs were announced in earnest, I ordered a whole shitload of product. It was really obvious that product to me was going to be king. You're going to have a bunch of publishers that are probably not going to be able to exist with the tariffs at the level that they were announced initially. There's a bunch of different titles that we sell pretty well that may not fit a reprint schedule based on those new costs. There was concern about Kickstarters that I had money out for not being able to afford to get them across in the container. And there's an entire residual, there's a whole ripple effect that ends up happening, sort of like what we had experienced when we soft ran this scenario in COVID a little bit. The situation with the factories ends up being that they don't have enough work. So it's really cheap for anybody to manufacture anything, but nothing's being manufactured. There's product that are sitting in the factories or they're sitting at the port. There's no shipping going on. And then as these numbers sort of flip-flop and stuff like that, people are turning on shipping, and then the shipping costs increase. So the tariffs are gone or they're lower, but the shipping and when it's going to land and so on and so forth. You know, some of the conversations that I've had about people is a talk about bonded warehouses. For those people that are unfamiliar with bonded warehouses, essentially what bonded warehouses are is it's a place where you can store your goods and you pay the tariff cost that's effective for those goods at the time that you take them out of the warehouse. So you can manufacture, you can ship, you can do everything you want. You can store them in a bonded warehouse, which there's several in the country, not nearly enough to take care of what we're dealing with at this point, and a bunch of different reasons why they were maintained previously. Sometimes it was liquor sales and different things like that. And lo and behold, as soon as these tariffs were announced, a large group purchased a whole shitload of bonded warehouses on the West Coast because they saw the opportunity that was there too. So the downside to bonded warehouses a lot of times for producers is that they tend to cost you a lot more to store your goods there. So you're paying a premium. They have to do a lot of different inspections, and they have to be up to snuff on what they're doing for that warehouse to be able to be a bonded warehouse and things. Those carve outs are hard to do. So the cost tends to be more expensive for people that want to leave their product in that spot. So you sort of have to weigh the decision of, is the increased cost for me to have to store those goods worth the savings that I may or may not end up seeing on the tariffs with the way that the situation is. So the reality of it is in terms of what I've seen so far is we've had a couple of publishers that have gone out of business or have ceased to produce. I think just like COVID, in some cases, this is sort of a convenient excuse for businesses that were a little shaky at the time. And I think for some businesses, it's a legitimate reason why, well, we can't function or produce goods at 145% the cost of what we thought it was going to be, because nobody can run their business that way. It's just not realistic. I can't begin to try to understand what my business would be like if I had to, while the distributor was shipping my goods, try to figure out what the percentage was when it gets to my store, and then what I would need to charge, and then have that adjust on a weekly, monthly, hourly basis. Like, it's really, really crazy environment to try to manage and to try to mitigate. Other things that we've seen is some of the producers have already increased their prices. My assumption is, and this is again based on what we saw in COVID, I don't think that those prices are going to go down post tariffs. I think these prices are the new prices that we're going to end up dealing with, and I'm sort of modeling my business based on that. Now, what that means for my consumers and what that means for me specifically is that there are going to be some goods that where their price increase is just prohibitive for me to decide to carry it as a retailer. I don't want to suck up a margin loss. There's all kinds of different ways that people are going to sort of deal with tariffs on the producer side of things, as well as the distribution side of things. And as a retailer, the reality of it is the way that I'm going to handle every product is I'm going to evaluate the cost to me versus the money that I can make on that product and decide whether or not I want to bring it in. The day that the tariffs were announced, I ordered like it was Christmas the following day. The warehouse was completely filled with product, and as things have sort of changed and numbers have switched and adjusted and things like that, the question that I found myself running into is whether or not I want to keep up that inventory load, whether I want to sell it down in the hopes that this sort of thing is managed and dealt with in a different way within the next 90 days. The reality of it is, though, that the consistency has been in the inconsistency of knowing. And because of that, I have to continue doing it this way. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to have a whole ton of products that are going to come in the next couple of months, and they're going to be at this new increased price. And I'm going to have a number of those goods that are in my store that are at a decreased price as well. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to take some sort of a blended rate for that, and then I'm going to price based on what the margin is that I need between the blend of the total inventory of what I have overall. I don't see a better way for me to do that. Now, that's going to be weird. Some of my products are just going to naturally sit at a MSRP threshold that's actually below what the publisher is going to charge, probably. It's going to be really, really hard to take a look at what pricing is and understand what the reality of things are, because everybody's got to kind of manage it in a different way. And I think MSRP is one of those things that sort of takes a big hit here, because there are going to be some products that I'm going to continue to sell at whatever the MSRP is now, because I've got plenty of those products, and the new MSRP will come in, and maybe it's a product that I wouldn't normally order before. I wouldn't order based on that pricing. So it's a fluid situation. I'm going to adjust the best that I can. I'm going to try the best that I can to make it so that it's not a situation where my customers have to deal with anything more than what I'm dealing with. And I'm just going to be fair and assess each product sort of as it comes, and each product line as it comes. And my product mix will definitely change during this process, because there are going to be some times when people can't make the product at the way that it needs to be made. And I just don't want to sacrifice sales or space because of that if I have something else to fit in that space. The other thing that people have asked is whether or not this has had a direct impact on my customers, and it's hard to say. We have a really wide pool of customers. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that some of the customers that come in here to shop from time to time may have been federal employees that had lost their jobs or their funding or whatever the case may be. I can't give a direct number on what that's been. I will say that our sales have increased steadily this year. We're up 18 to 20%, depending on what the month is, in a year-over-year comparison, without having to deal with the tariff situation last year. Now, some of that's the strength of the TCG market as well, which we lean pretty heavily into, and some of that is, board games are doing okay for us as well. And the rest of the product categories have fired right along. Nobody's really lagging behind this year. I would say that GW has even further outpaced a lot of the other miniatures companies at this point. TCG sales have been just through the roof. So a lot of the growth is there, and our growth has been in events. Our event numbers are out of control to the point where we're looking at another expansion within the next 12 months and looking to increase our square footage another 3,000 to 7,000 square feet, or maybe even more. We'll see what happens as far as what our opportunities are there, but those are conversations that we're having now. So as far as where am I with these tariffs and what's going to happen in the collapse of the industry and things like that, I'm just going to move forward the same way that I would before and evaluate the stuff that I can evaluate and control the things that I can control. I can tell you this, that the week that the tariffs were announced, there was a lot of uncertainty. My business partner and I decided that what we were going to do is just pay all our employees double paychecks. So that really calmed them down. They got double paychecks for that week, which was really nice. All of them were pretty thrilled about that and that sort of thing. So their concern for what the business was going to go and how we were going to navigate the tariffs were alleviated by having additional money in their pockets. So we're just going to use it as a fluid situation and manage it the best that we can. I feel bad for the publishing partners that have to make these really tough decisions, and the folks that are out of work now because of it, and the products that are orphaned because they don't have anybody that's willing to make them at that rate. And hopefully at some point something comes in that gives us a little bit more consistency, as strange as that is to think about. Trade show. So I went to the ACD, they're calling it the Games Expo now. And so new day. It was ACD Games Day for a long time. I got to speak twice. I was on a panel with a number of other really talented retailers, and we talked all about product diversity. So it was, how do you decide what and when and where to get outside of maybe the confines of the four pillars that we essentially carry now, which is board games, card games, role-playing games, and miniature games. I'm always quick to point out too that diversity can happen inside of those lines rather than having to think that you have to get out and go and carry disc golf and that sort of thing. Like if you're a card game store, diversifying into miniatures is a hard thing to do, but bringing in your 4th or 5th or 6th or 17th card game is a lot easier to manage because you sort of know what that business is like. So that's a large recommendation for me when you're going to get outside of that growth. And then my keynote at the end of the day was about growing your business and some of the pains that I've run into in the process of the move that we did here. Now that we're almost 2 years into it, another 16 days will be 2 years into this move. And then also with me managing the Roseville store at Game Center, sort of the stuff that I've had to do with the staff over there and the stuff that I've run into. And at the end, it was sort of how do you take all the stuff that you learn at the trade show back home and be able to apply the things that you've learned in a way that you can measure those things, you can measure the successes, you don't exhaust your staff with all the changes that you want to do. And how do you make sure that you take that practical information, put it into action, and then you get the value out of it in terms of increased sales, increased event participation, new customers for the time that you spent away, the travel, and the cost that it was for you to go to that event. The event in general is ACES. ACD puts on the best trade show in the industry. Not that there's as many around as there used to be, but it's a full-on sprint of information with really, really high quality educational panels. And I'm not saying that just because I participate, but the retailers that they had that put on other talks as well. Pat Fugue was there talking about different things, and Nick Koss and Cody Romano and a handful of very, very well-regarded retailers are there. And the seminar structure from the publishers this year was a little bit better as well. They changed from a 1-hour format to a half-hour format, so it felt like the information was condensed and it was a lot more palpable, and it wasn't a whole bunch of people at the end of 20 minutes sort of looking at each other and trying to come up with questions for people. The other side of it was their show hall was so big and so expansive that they actually pushed out into what the mezzanine area would normally be, and they didn't have any of the service places in like they had before. Like they had a financial group in before, and they had UPS and FedEx and a couple of other things in there. There just was not any space for that. Between the growth in the toy stuff, the growth in the publishing side of stuff, like the hall was completely expanded. It was as full as it could possibly be. They brought Chessex and they brought their own in-house brands outside into the mezzanine where you just sort of walked in because there wasn't any space for them for the people that were presenting inside of there. So overall, really good show. I can't say enough about that show. If you're a publisher and you haven't attended, or if you're a retailer that hasn't attended, or if you're a retailer that doesn't have an account with them, I would very much tell you that it'd be worth your time to set that thing up. One of the things that ACD does that stands out from a lot of the other people in our industry is they have a really good reputation in the toy side of things. So they carry things like Hasbro and Barbie and different things like that, as well as there's a whole line of magnetic toys that they do, a much more robust offering for puzzles in terms of different quality puzzles with better density on their pieces and things like that. So it's a wider catalog than what you'll see from a traditional distributor. And the other thing that they have is they have this great new TCG coming out called Cookie Run, which is based on a phone game and a phone app and a sort of a phone world. It's very, very, very popular overseas. The card game itself is going to have some in-game currency in each of the packs. The in-game currency in each of the packs is actually worth more than what the pack costs. So sort of like the WoW TCG, it's really hard to miss on this thing from the perspective of the people that play the phone game will buy the packs whether they play the card game or not. The card game itself, I'd say, is a good it's a good starter TCG for somebody that's just looking to get into a game. Think about Set 1 Lorcana in terms of depth and density as far as the game goes. It certainly skews towards sort of a middle younger audience. It's not going to be the most complex TCG experience you've ever seen, but the artwork is cute, the game is pretty fun, and you can play it with pretty much anybody that's over 8 or 9 years old. We'll have a good time with the card game. So take a look at that if you haven't as well. ACD's got an exclusive with that. They're the only ones that are going to be carrying it. The team that they brought over to talk about the game did a really, really nice job. They had a nice booth set up. They gave out tons of starters and things like that. We're going to carry it. We're going to bring in the starters. We're going to run the event. We're going to see how it goes. It's an interesting challenge for us because I think it's tapping into a market that we don't normally see come in the door all the time. So if we can reach out and we can reach those people and we can keep them as Cookie Run customers, there's a possibility to kind of grow them into some of the other games down the road as well. There's not a lot of things that allow us to do that sort of thing. It reminds me a little bit of the My Little Pony card game in that way, and also Bella Sara from back in the day that brings in sort of an opportunity to try to sell a card game to a group of people that we wouldn't normally sell a card game to. Those are my thoughts on the ACD Games Expo. The other thing that happened that was super relevant for us there was Daggerheart launched. and sales were absolutely incredible for us. We sold out of all of our collector's editions in like hours. It was out of control, and most of the core games are gone, and you cannot find the game in distribution. So hats off to Darrington Press for that. That solidifies that game and how important it's going to be. I don't know if they were ready for how popular it was going to be. I think they did a really nice job. They spent 14 months sort of marketing this thing and saying that it was going to be the next big thing, and thus far it is. I'm sure they're scrambling to get more product out in the marketplace. We've got a little bit left. If you're looking for some of the core set, I think we've still got some up on our website, so you can go to millenniumgames.com to take a look at that. E-commerce is something that we've been growing steadily over the last couple of months now. We've been up and running for a couple of months. Our SEO has started to kick in. We're starting to recoup the benefits of that SEO stuff. It's amazing what happens with people buying stuff from the website. There's stuff that we're selling that is either sat on our shelf because our local group has had its fill, or it for whatever reason is just something that nobody else happens to be carrying as well. So I'm always amazed when I look at the sales sheets for what we're moving through there. Thank you to everybody that's participated on that. The website's slowly but surely improving. Final segment, I'll talk about Riftbound. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, I think the last time I was on, I actually talked about Riftbound, which is why I have all these League of Legends statues behind me. They're left over. That's my collection of stuff. I have more at home too, so I'm a bit of a League of Legends fanboy for sure. Universes and Riot are in the business of creating this Riftbound TCG. It's a collaborative effort. Universes is best known for their fighting game, card game. That's the fourth oldest in the marketplace, just behind Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it's probably got to be almost 20 years old at this point. They just released a really cool spoiler for their Ninja Turtles set that's coming out. The artwork looks fantastic, which their art department is the best in the business right now. Zoe and her team does a really good job understanding what cards need to look like and card frames need to look like, and it's a very modern look. If you haven't had the chance to take a look at some of the stuff that they did from Exandria, the Critical Role set, I would encourage you to take a look at what some of that artwork looks like and take a look at some of the stuff you're going to see in the next couple of weeks that are coming out from Riftbound. It's really compelling stuff. So I got an invite to go to California to visit with UVS and Riot Games at the Riot Games Studios. The last time I was in LA, oddly enough, was to go and to watch the LCS live with a friend of mine that happened to be out in that area. So it was a return. Now the offices that we were at are not directly near the place where they do the LCS, the live events, but it's pretty close by. So I don't know, there's 30 or so retailers, pretty wide swath. There were some international retailers there. There were definitely some brick and mortar retailers there. There were some e-commerce retailers there. There were a handful of people that were probably more primarily Whatnot or Breakers or however you consider that group of people at this point. We all got on a shuttle bus. They sent us over to the offices. They brought us to the lobby, gave us a really nice tour. The studios are absolutely amazing. There's a little coffee bar that sort of had a pirate theme. We got to order some coffees, and then we were off to go into the breakout room that we were going to be in the next building over and have a discussion with both the UVS team and the Riot team about what they're doing with regard to this card game. So there were a number of folks from Riot that spoke about the card game. There were a number of folks from UVS that spoke about the card game. They talked about all different things. So we got to learn about sort of the set structure, where they started with the game, where they're looking to go with the game, some conversation about organized play. We talked about card frames and different things like that. And they were very open to answer any of the questions that we had. There were very few questions that we asked during the course of the conversation that they didn't want to answer, or there was just more to come. They're both very professional teams. It was really nice to see the synergy between the Riot Games team and the UVS team. One of the concerns that I had initially when the Project K stuff was announced and that initial video came out is I was pretty critical of it. And a lot of my criticism was revolved around the multiplayer focus, and it was revolved around the card frames and the different way that they looked and how it didn't look modern to me, and the concerns that I had there and such. And this was before I knew anything about UVS being part of the team. And what was interesting about it is it's very clear Riot knows how to build a game. They know how to build a community. They know what really extensive, exciting events look like. So one of the questions that I asked them, I probably got the best answer I've ever been given in the industry when it comes to a question about a TCG. was we had gotten to sort of this middle part, and the marketing team, Riot's marketing team, was up on stage, and they were talking about the different avenues and the different approaches and the embargoes that we were going to deal with and stuff. I would have more stuff here, but there's an additional embargo on us until the 9th where we can't actually show the stuff that we got. It gives the influencers some time to be able to put their stuff together and cut their videos and stuff. And it's a very strategic and it's a tactical rollout and a launch, one that they take really seriously and one that I respect a ton. It's really nice to be involved in seeing a company that's that focused on making sure everything is running the right way. So the question that I asked was, unlike what we've dealt with in the TCG world in the last couple of years, where we've seen spikes in successful TCGs, where we've had Mickey Mouse and we've had Luke Skywalker and we've had Monkey D. Luffy and a whole bunch of different IP product come on board to be super successful for us, to allow us to engage with a product base or a fan group that didn't exist, that wasn't engaged with those games already. League of Legends is a game. There's however many active users you have. So how are you going to take this game, this TCG, and where does the market of players come from if you're marketing a TCG to people that are already actively involved in the IP of a game, right? This isn't a movie, this isn't a TV show, although Arcane obviously was wildly popular on Netflix. It's certainly, nobody would argue that it's not as popular as Mickey Mouse or Luke Skywalker or even One Piece probably. So the answer that I was given was that League of Legends as a game in general is a very highly technical game. It's a long game, 40-45 minute playtime. Twice a year during the seasons, they sort of shuffle the deck a little bit and they change up the way that the game functions and some of the systems inside of the game. And it takes a whole lot of time and a lot of effort to be able to keep track of what's going on in that game. On top of that, you've got new champions that are coming in all the time that you need to learn them, and you have to learn your roles and things like that. So there's a lot involved in staying engaged actively as a League of Legends player. The game's been around for 16 years at this point. I started playing it in late August of 2010. I only know that because Urgot had come out the week that I started playing. What they're trying to do with the card game is they're trying to take all those people over the course of the last 16 years that have either played the game and found some reason why they couldn't sort of keep up with the game, and they still love the IP, they still love the champions, and they have a little bit more time to get themselves invested in a card game. And the technical aspect of a card game is probably not quite as high as what it is in terms of digital. The other side of that is there's a whole bunch of people that would be more willing to play a card game than they would to get online and try to play a computer game and that sort of thing. So there's the lapsed player angle, there's the card game angle, and then there's a whole bunch of fans of the IP that have come out because of Arcane. So you've got Arcane that brings in another group. So what they told me in that is they're actually intelligent enough that they're not targeting their active digital players specifically with this game. What they're going to try to market to is all those other people. It was a really intelligent take and a really intelligent understanding. And part of it, I think, that rang true for me was they were mostly talking to me there, because I've been an on again, off again player over a long period of time since the game's been around. And it does take a lot of investment in my time to get to the point where I can be competent, let alone, to a level of expertise or something where I feel like I'm winning. And the reality of it is, and they didn't back away from this, that the digital community out there can be fairly toxic at times, and that toxicity is something that you tend to not see as much when you engage with somebody face to face, which all that stuff rang true. So it was really nice for them to already sort of have that answered for me. I was really happy that they were not looking specifically at that thing. Not to say that they won't talk about the game to their active player base and things like that, but it's something where like they feel like this game can be successful enough without having to have any of those people come off of their keyboards and put cards into sleeves and shuffle them up and play in the game. Aside from that, there's a lot of great things coming for the game. I could go into an in-depth conversation about all kinds of different stuff. But in the next week or so, there's going to be some great influencers and some great content creators that are going to release a whole bunch of stuff. I more wanted to talk about the business side of things, and I'll say this. From top to bottom, it was very, very clear to me that Riot understood that they were confident and comfortable that they could make a really good card game. UVS was bringing a skill set and expertise to them that they wouldn't have had, and they wouldn't have been able to spin up as quickly as they have been able to. Does Riot have enough money? Can they go out there and find somebody and build an entire team to make card games and to figure card games out and to do that side of things? Yeah, absolutely. But it was very clear to them the reason to partner with UVS is UVS is already doing that in a competent way. It's going to save us so much time getting this game into market, given the amount of time that we spend in design and development for the different sets and so on and so forth. If we partner with these guys, they can bring a level of quality that we want to this game and can bring us into the process a lot faster than it would be for us to be able to spend our time and our effort to do it that way. So it feels like a really good partnership. I'm excited for the guys at UVS. I said it before, they're hardworking guys. That team is fantastic. They're collecting a boatload of talent from all these different places, and they just get better and better and better every single month over there. They're hardworking. The stuff that they're doing is fantastic. So I'm really excited to see what they have for this game. Release dates, all of that good stuff will come out in the next week or so when they start their general marketing, and we'll kind of move on from there. So I think that's the show for today. A little bit about tariffs. Really difficult situation for everybody to deal with. I don't think that the majority of my customers have felt the pain of it yet. I haven't felt the pain of it yet, specifically as far as buying and selling games and that sort of thing, but I know it's coming. So I'm sort of planning for that with a little bit of inventory. ACD Games Day was fantastic as always. It's a wonderful time. I get to have really good conversations with the publishers out there. Their team, the ACD team, is fantastic, and the retailers there are always really, really solid as well. If Riftbound isn't on your agenda to take a look at as a player or as a retailer in the next couple of weeks, I feel confident that the marketing that you're going to see, and when they start talking about some of the systems and some of the things that are coming, you will have the same level of enthusiasm for what the potential for this game is as I do. So with that, I'm going to leave you all until next time. I'll try to get back here next week. We'll see. Maybe we'll do 2 in a row. So thanks everybody for stopping by, and happy gaming.